Hello, this is Courtney with Secret Creative. Thanks for joining me today. Card I have today is using this beautiful Folklore background die from Fresh Studio, and then I'm also going to use a couple sentiments from another stamp set of theirs a little bit later in the process, but for right now I'm going to start with this background panel. So I'm using a Bristol. It's either this Blick Smooth Bristol or Strathmore Bristol 300 series. What I do is I take these sheets, they're 9 by 12, and I cut them into 4. I pre-cut a lot of my card making panels just so they're ready when the urge hits, and I keep them in a drawer. So I have both of these mixed up in my drawer. Both of them work great. I can't tell the difference between the two. So there you go. But what we're going to do today is do some ink blending on this card panel. So I'm showing you the colors right here. I'm going to start, they're all Gina K premium dye inks. I'm going to start with Cherry Red. Ooh, move on to Wild Dandelion, Tangerine Twist, Lucky Clover, Ocean Mist, Blue Denim, and Wild Lilac are the colors I'm using. And I'm just using these blending brushes that I got off Amazon. Pretty cheap alternative to some of the options out there. I've been trying them out. I'm going to do a review on them once I've been able to thoroughly give them a try. But so far they seem to work just fine for me. No issues. I have a different brush for each color. They're cheap enough that it's easy enough to do this. So I've got rainbow color on the bridges, or on the brushes, and then I also have one for white pigment ink, one for black inks, and then one for that I'm probably going to use on beiges and browns. So a full 10 brushes that I've got. So look for a review on those coming soon after I've been able to really give them a good thorough try. But so far they seem to be working just good. So first off, I've laid down all my colors from the red down to the purple, and then I'm just going back over a little bit just to help with that blending a little bit. Now this die cut is going to take most of the card panel away, so you do not have to have great blending for this. Just work at it a little bit and then move on to the die cutting. So with an intricate die cut like this, you're going to find sometimes it's really hard to get all of the pieces out. So I find sometimes putting my panel over a towel and brushing it helps get a lot of those pieces out. I did have to pull out a blade to help cut some of the bits out that didn't want to come, but I was able to get everything die cut cleanly. Here I've just got this in a box in a well-ventilated area, put some spray adhesive down, and then put this onto a card, an oversized card panel. Just with all those little pieces, I did not want to try to get enough liquid glue down to get all this. So I'm going to trim some of the excess off using the Tim Holtz trimmer here, and then I'm going to take my shears and get really close, and I just wanted some of that excess off before I started trimming. So that's how I will deal with a very intricate die like this, just because the little pieces move. Sometimes it's really hard to get it placed correctly. So I've found putting a larger panel over the back and using a spray adhesive works the best. So now I've got the Lush Greenery stamp set, and that's where I'm getting my sentiment from. And I'm using UR and then a script Awesome. So first off, I'm stamping these two using VersaMark Watermark Ink, and I emboss with Ranger White embossing powder. I really like the Ranger embossing powders. That's what I've used for a long time. I tend to not have any issues with them, so I just keep on using them. So I used an anti-static powder tool there a little bit just to keep the excess embossing powder to a minimum. You'll see I do get some anyway, but it easily brushes off with a paintbrush, and then I set with a preheated heat tool. So I leave my higher used embossing powders in these little containers I got from IKEA. Very cheap, they work great, they're plastic, highly recommend them, and they're from IKEA, so they're we know they're cheap that way. But so I've got the Wagner heat gun here, setting the cardstock, and you're going to see here an issue I run into, which is sometimes I die cut first and then heat emboss or stamp. Sometimes I do the other way. Well, I realized right here I can't line up my die cut. So what I did is gave it my best guess, and it's a little off. It could be used, but it's off more than I want. So I die cut another that I'm going to stamp on top of emboss. This one I'll be able to get better. So I kept the negative space, as you'll see, and I use that as my guide. So I'm going to place that stamp into the hole so I can see exactly where it's going to stamp on that die cut, and then I place the die cut in and stamp it that way, and I'm able to get a perfect alignment that way. So that's why I recommend doing these types of die cuts, is do the die cut first and then the stamping over. A lot of times I'll do a lot of my die cut stamping that way. It just kind of depends on my whim, and if I think far enough ahead to remember that I need to do that for specific instances like today's. So anyway, I did do the embossing, and I must have not stamped my VersaMark on there very good because I did have some blank spots on my embossing. So no problem, just I had left the stamp in on my Misti, so I was able to just put the die cut right back in, put more VersaMark on, get some more embossing powder, and then heat set that, and it looked great the second time. So now I'm just trimming down the UR into a longer panel. I want the awesome to fit at the end of it, which it does. I didn't show that spacing, but I did make sure that it was going to fit at the end there. And then gluing that card panel down onto my card base, and then just playing around with my alignment exactly where I want to place this. I use liquid glue, Gina K Connect, to put that base panel down, and then I'm using scrapbook adhesives, the double-sided adhesive shapes, to pop up that sentiment. These little squares are great because they come in two sizes, but they're also easily trimmable if you need them a different size beyond that. So once I get that sentiment popped up, the card is complete. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon.